Live from the Deer and Deer Hunting headquarters here in Iola, Wisconsin. Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to Deer Talk Now. Joining you as we do every week, I'm Dan Schmidt. This week's special guest, Steve Bartylla. Steve's in the house. Steve, whitetail hunting expert, land management expert, good friend, all-around great guy. How you doing today?
Here's the $5 for saying that, buddy.
Oh, I thought it was 10.
What? No, I'm cheap.
Steve, you're in town. Welcome once again to the offices. I know you've been doing a lot of work not only this week, but this spring, as you always do with your management consulting and that kind of thing. What's going on this week? What are you in town? I know you're doing a little bit of habitat work.
Yeah, exactly. Just trying to, I have a handful of properties I have long-term management responsibilities on, and trying to get the things done that need to be done this time of year.
Lots of deer management. For those who don't know Steve, you need to re-up your deer and deer hunting subscription. Steve has been a long-time deer and deer hunting contributor. You see him on TV. He's everywhere these days, and that's because Steve knows what he's talking about. Steve is one of the best land managers, private land deer managers that I know of, and that would be across North America. But I'm not going to get your head any bigger than it already is, because we're not going to be able to get you back through the door here.
I know.
But Steve is the man. He knows these things just by basically studying deer and deer hunting. Not the magazine, but the subjects over so many years. You've been doing this, Steve, for 25, 30 years.
Right around there.
And you really kind of got into the habitat game here within the last few years, real heavily.
Well, actually, when I first began, it was in the habitat end. And had a lot of, especially for writing, probably half or more of my articles way back when was on habitat. And obviously all the consulting I do is split between hunting and or habitat improvement and deer management. Lately, there's just been such a demand, though, that, well, as I said, initially it was at least 50% habitat deer management type work, and then it tapered into there was way more of a demand for hunting type information, and the last 3-4 years, the demand for good, solid habitat and deer management information through the roof.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's been such a resurgence in people wanting to not only know more about this, but to have actual people, qualified professionals, come out and look at their properties?
I think it's because of the vast amount of information out there now. We hunters in general, habitat managers, have so much more information available to them today, that they've educated themselves to the point that they realize that, you know what, just going out and slapping out a food plot, I can hurt myself more than help if I don't think through all of the different factors. Where do I want, that back corner, that big field. Yeah, that's a great, easy place to put it and have deer come out, but how am I going to get into that stand? How am I going to get out? What wind can I hunt it from safely? I really believe what's happened is people have educated themselves enough to the point where they realize, wait a minute, I can mess up.
And that's a good point that you make there, and I agree with you 100%. Is it also, I'm going to say yes before I even ask you the question, back in the day, 10, 15 years ago, in some cases a little bit longer than that, if you put out a food plot, game over. You were ahead of the game, and it was, I don't want to say easy, but it took a really marginal property to a fantastic property. Yeah. Is it the competition now with
without a doubt? Without a doubt. I mean, you're doing this, he's doing it over there, she's doing it over there, and they're doing it over there. You know what? All of a sudden, I'm not the only player in town anymore. All my neighbors are doing it as well. And the deer I would have sucked over here, well, I need to do it better. I need to make my habitat, as long as I go ahead and make my habitat better, safer, better food, better cover, water supply, all of that. Wait a minute, I can still accomplish that. But unless I take my game to the next level, you know what, I'm going to be sitting here having put, a couple $1,000s into food plots, and I ain't going to be watching a lot of deer.
That's the other point that I was going to bring up, is not only the competition is stiffer, the prices are higher. I mean, everything's gone up. Gas for vehicles and tractor use. If you don't own your own tractor, you got to rent one. There's all these other things. So it's like it's a big investment.
And the nice thing is you can be very, very, very effective while minimizing your investment. But no offense, you don't figure that out from the magazines, from the TV shows, from these. It's spend, spend, spend. You can accomplish, and there are some, don't get me wrong, awesome products out there. But there's also ways to go on a budget and get, if not as good a results, darn close to as good.
Okay, Steve, let's stop there for a second. We're gonna give this information at the end as well, but just give me a quick plug so readers know you actually do this as part of your living, as far as consulting and management work. Where can people get a hold of you, and what is the proper channel there?
Oh, there's currently, I'm going to give you two different ways to do it. One is a website. The problem is the website is not where it's not where it will be just a month from now. But that's just food-plots-for-deer.com. We've got John Azoga as a contributor.
Long-time deer and deer hunting contributor.
Keith McCaffrey's given us some stuff. A tremendous amount of information will be there, and right now, it's free. Okay. And that's also how you can contact me for consulting services, or just plain my email address, bowrider@yahoo.com.
That's an easy one. bowrider@yahoo.com. It's one of my favorite email addresses in the entire hunting industry, by the way. Steve, another thing that I want to have you mention quickly is you're working on a new book for us. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, before I wrote my first book, I knew what my first 5 were going to be. And the first one was on stand placement. If you don't have stand placement down, nothing else matters. Next one was on the minor details that I believed a person, well, forget about what I believed for myself were the biggest difference makers. And then I knew the third one would be on, okay, now how do you tie this all together with tactics? And that's really what this one's about, is more what I call more aggressive type tactics. But my definition of aggressive is a lot different than most people. I don't believe in doing foolish things. It's all about stacking as many odds in your favor as possible. No, to me, aggression is, since we're talking about habitat, I set, anywhere from 70 to 90% of each property aside as a sanctuary. Mm-hmm. But I'll put stands in those sanctuaries. I will put them in the locations they're just slam dunk. This is a great spot. I'm going to put a stand there. I'm hoping I never have to hunt it. No, and at most, I'll hunt it once or twice a season. And that to me is aggressive. Actually going in once or twice into a sanctuary during the course of a season and hunting it. When everything's perfect, you get in there well before first light. You're planning on sitting all day. Hopefully you're not going to, because you're going to kill before then. But that to me is aggressive hunting.
That's aggressive, because a lot of times what we've preached over the years is never ever go in that sanctuary. Yeah. Oh my God, no, don't do that.
Yeah. And what I view it as is it's my ace in the hole. I really don't want to hunt this, but dang it if I have to. And to put it in perspective, on the properties I manage, I'll hunt a sanctuary 1 every 3 years. Mm-hmm. Because if you set it up right, you never have to. But dang it, if I really need to kill a buck, I'm going to go into it.
The conditions are perfect. You could do it once or twice a year.
Exactly.
Check out Steve's other work at deeranddeerhunting.com. Also shopdeerhunting.com. A lot of good things there. We're going to get to I'm going to tell you right now, the annual game camera sale is going on right now at shopdeerhunting.com. So if you want to get some extra cameras for your property, check it out. Some of these are up to 79% off today. Wow. Get on there. Use the Deer Talk discount. Just as Deer Talk in the checkout box, you're going to get an extra 10% off your order. Steve, let's get to it. We have 5 things we want to talk about today, and we're going to do it briefly, rapid fire succession like we normally do. We're talking about things you're doing right now. It's the end of May. We're getting closer to June. Things that somebody can do right now to make their property better hunting for this fall. The first thing on your list that you gave me here was grain plots. You're putting in some grain plots. What does that entail? And what are some pointers that you can give for somebody on that right now?
When I'm talking grain plots up in the Midwest and points further north, I'm talking corn and soybeans. I not to jump on a political soapbox here or anything, not political at all, but no matter what you want to credit it for, I'll tell you what, it sure seems to me like our temperatures are changing. Our summers are getting hotter. There's a bunch of rain, no rain at all. Growing plots is getting to be
Hot weather,
exactly. It's getting to be
colder winter.
Yep, is getting to be more and more of a challenge, mainly because of droughts. 2012, frankly, made me forget everything I thought I knew and try to reinvent the wheel. When you can get away with it, if you can rent the equipment, no-till helps so darn much because you're not breaking the soil, you're not drying it out. And having a layer of duft on top, again, up until your grain plots really start coming over and creating that canopy, it's protecting the soil moisture, all that good stuff. So that's something I would strongly encourage people if they have the capability. Otherwise, you can get away with planting grain with an ATV and a disc. Now, all you need to do is prepare that seed bed, disc it up good, and dump that seed on top. If you're going to take this route, I typically go 125% suggested planting rate, and then just lightly disc over it and walk away. You don't have to have the big equipment to pull a lot of this stuff.
That's actually a misconception with people saying I can't plant corn. I don't have that kind of equipment.
This is slightly off topic, but in recent years, something I've really grown fond of is putting in food plots with nothing more than a hand sprayer, with a hand seeder and a sprayer. Whether it's a backpack or one on the back of your ATV, you go into an area, you spray it, you broadcast the seeds over top. Works great with clovers, brassicas, those types of things, because as those weeds then die, they drop down over those seeds and they create that moisture barrier.
Creating the moisture, and those seeds are going to germinate then.
Now, is it under ideal conditions as effective as going out there with a tractor and all that? No. But it's pretty. I can show you pictures of some that, wow.
And you're just, the other thing that we always tell people is you're planting this for deer.
Yeah.
You're not planting this
You're
to
not
harvest
cash
it and cash cropping it and feed it to cattle and things like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, right?
No, it doesn't. And as I said, for somebody who's just trying to establish that kill plot and doesn't have a lot of equipment, can't afford to rent equipment, you can put it in very cheap.
That's a really good point.
Real quick, speaking of cheap, brand name Roundup is awesome. Generic Roundup's a lot cheaper.
A lot cheaper. Lot cheaper. And that's glyphosate, I can't remember what percentage.
And what you do is you just go ahead and you get a bunch of your buddies together. Don't go to your small
Local
convenience stores.
store.
Go to the seed dealer and buy a big jug and then just split it between 10 guys, and you just paid a fraction of what you would.
And that's really good that's a tip that Brad has actually given here on Deer Talk in the past, and it's something that really helps. I mean, because let's face it, the average guy can't sit there and afford $60 for a little bottle. It's just the way
especially,
it is. And we're here to be honest. It's like you said, you can do this without sitting there thinking, man, I gotta, your kids need new clothes and you've got other things that you want to do, and it's like, well, I'm not going to break the family budget just to put in a food plot.
Exactly.
And there are ways you can get around that. That's some good tips, Steve. Let's go from grain plots and to the second thing. And what I really like about you is you're honest on all of these things, because you said mineral licks. And a lot of people who kind of just get stuck in that cycle of how we do things as deer hunters all the time, saying, oh no, I had to have those things in 2 months ago. And you're like, no, you don't. You can get you can still get those mineral licks established now, and actually it's a pretty good time, even in June, to do that. And that's something you're doing right now.
And exactly, and what it really is great for is getting camera surveys. Now, in my opinion, camera surveys themselves are, as far as trying to determine the population on your property, you've got immigration, there's some serious flaws with it. But it sure does help when you know what bucks you got there.
Yeah,
for
you know
this
which
fall.
ones, especially if they're ones, it's going to be a few weeks here yet before you're going to get any idea what you have out there.
But you get those mineral licks established. Now, oftentimes it takes a little while to suck in all the deer from the area. So by establishing them now, a month from now, you should have a pretty good sampling of the deer in that area. Now, will there be a dice roll and a little bit of a shakeup coming
Sure.
for this? Sure, but I'll tell you what, it sure is a lot more exciting to go out there and hunt when you, at least over the summer, had that 150-inch buck there.
You know,
Maybe-
there's something there. There's something to hope for.
Maybe he left, but he had warm fuzzies to be there during the summer. Think he's going to come back this fall when the girls are a little bit more interesting?
So what are you doing with a mineral lick? Now, one disclaimer we have to have here, there's states where you can't put in mineral
Certainly.
licks, and you
Yep.
better be sure of that.
Thank you.
Just because your local farm store is selling mineral doesn't mean you can use it. So you need to check in on that. It's a huge fine in some areas, especially where we're here in Wisconsin. You get busted with a mineral lick, you're going to get fined and you're going to get ticketed.
Yeah.
There are other places in the country where you can put these things out freely. What are some tips for people who can put these in, Steve, as far as establishing one where there hasn't one been established previously? What would be your tips for getting one going?
Next to, if you have a pond and let deer are watering it heavily, that's a great spot. That clover plot, that alfalfa plot, that they're field, either one, that they're hammering this summer. Find one of the better trails leading to it, just back into the woods 10, 20 yards. Any type of a funnel feature that they're using. The one thing that I am going to suggest, though, is that these locations better be low impact. And whether we're talking minerals or you were mentioning the camera sale earlier, two of the biggest trip ups I see in both those areas is putting them in high impact locations. These things are supposed to help you. So do what you can to make sure they do by not putting them in high impact locations and then going and checking them again and again and again and again and again and educating your deer to being hunted. And I'm going to jump off topic real quick for 1 second. In my opinion, the biggest mistake people make when it comes to managing their property, they hunt and occupy too much of it. Way too much of it. As I said earlier, 70 to 90% of the ground that on the properties I manage, 70 to 90% of it, it's sanctuary. That doesn't mean you can't hunt the heck out of the property. You sure can. It's how you lay it out. You lay it out smart so you can. But all this stuff should be low impact when you're talking minerals and cameras, as I mentioned.
That's great tips, and I've learned from you, Steve, by actually hunting with you and seeing how you do set up some of your properties. The biggest key, and you've harped on this in your articles for 20 years, not only just managing deer, just hunting deer, is impact. And how now does this mean you should be walking? There's two sides of this, because people see that, and I've said in some of my seminars, for crying out loud, stop going out there like you're walking on eggshells. You own property, enjoy it, but at the same time, when you're hunting, you just got to be smart about it.
Yeah.
And it's like running out there, like you said, in the summertime, constantly checking that trail camera. You can get away with that in some places, and you might get some great photos of deer and food plots, but guess what? You're probably not going to kill a mature buck in that area come fall. Because they know that you were there, and they know exactly where you, and most guys are putting these things where they're going to be hunting, within 50 yards of where the tree stand's going to be. So those are some of the, I guess you'd call them, great baseball player Paul Molitor had this quote. He said, if it was common sense, wouldn't everybody have it?
Yeah. I've used that quote so many times.
But I guess that is it. You got to use some common sense on how you go about these things.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to jump ahead because I know we're going to be talking about it, but the biggest thing is goals. Have fun. This is supposed to be fun. Just identify what your goals are, and then also, you know what? This area here, I'm going to mess around in. This area here, I'm not. This area here,
And you will see that difference.
Yeah,
Even
I'm
after a
going to
couple of years of doing
I'm
this.
going to treat this area here with kit gloves. And that way you can go ahead and you can hunt a lot. A huge misconception is that if I'm going to manage my property for big bucks, I can't hunt there. I've got to. You can't let your friends hunt. You can't let your family hunt. You have to be no. You have to set your property up so you can do those things. And that's the key to a plan. You put together a great plan, and you are going to be able to do everything you just spoke about. thank you for saying that type of stuff in your seminars, because we have been getting so wrapped up into
I think we
this
get so wound up, and it's just
that
like
we forget
like you
common
said,
sense.
It's not fun anymore.
No.
And it's like, no, I can't let you guys hunt, or I got somebody out there. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
if you go about this, let's just jump forward there, Steve, because I know we're running short on time here. But we're going to cross one of those things off the list. We're going to go straight to goals, and let's let you talk about that for a second, because you're a big proponent of not only setting goals but coming up with a formalized plan and implementing that plan. Let's start with goals and let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think a good way to put it is to put it in perspective on all the new clients I have, and every year when I do a review with them. I've got a 2.5-page questionnaire that they have to fill out. The primary purpose of that questionnaire is, what are your goals? What do you really want? It seems like that should be such a simple question.
So what does the guy say? I mean, what's the average response? Guys say, my goals are, I want to kill bigger deer.
That's what you'd think everybody would say. But the more, and that's why there's more than just that one question. The more you dig, the more they find, oh, I want my sons and daughters to be able to hunt out here with me as well and have fun, and I'm going to try to get my wife into hunting this year for the first time. And man, the biggest thing for her is she needs to see deer. What I'm really getting at is, before you do anything, sit down and realistically map out your goals. It does not matter what those goals are. No difference whatsoever. There's not, as I so often tell clients. So
what you're saying is, and I mean to cut you off here, but what you're saying is, you can throw out all the goals you want, and there's a certain level of achievement. Because most guys are automatically going to try to answer those questions saying, well, I want to kill bigger deer, but I want my kids to be able to hunt here, my wife to be able to hunt out here, and we want a small game hunt out here. We're not going to be able to do all that because I'm trying to hunt big deer. Right? I mean, there is a certain level of things that you say you could probably achieve all of this if you come up with.
Exactly.
If you get this all on a map, and let's map it out and say, okay, how are we going to achieve all this?
Yeah, and you just hammered the next thing we were going to talk about. That the reason you want to identify all the things you want to do on this property, all the variables, how much money you're willing to spend, how much time you can spend, is so that you can map out a plan to achieve it all. Before you go out there and you hinge cut your first tree, before you even think about putting in a food plot, before you put in a water hole, what you do is you sit down with an aerial photo of your property, and what are the deer doing right now? What do I want them to do? How can I get them to do that? And all of a sudden you start drawing out a plan. Wherein the biggest thing you want to do when you're planning, and I cannot possibly stress enough to identify your goals first and then formulate a plan. If you go out there and you just start improving things, odds are you're going to make your hunting more difficult. That's a really tough concept for most people to grasp, but man, is it ever true. I would, when I've got a client coming to me, I cringe a little bit when they say that they've been making improvements the last 5-6 years. I really want somebody, and you know what? We can fix it. We'll work with it. We'll make it work. But what's perfect is, I'm just bought this new property and I want to get going and start doing some stuff. Beautiful. We got a clean slate.
You can start from scratch.
Now we can go ahead and formulate a plan but that's if you identify the goals. You can then formulate the plan. And the big thing I was getting at there is, it is good and great to help deer. I love deer. Frankly, I probably shouldn't say this, but I respect deer more than I respect most people. Okay. But you know what? Whether it's politically correct or not, I want to kill them. And I am going to go into their world. I'm going to remodel their home. If I'm going to remodel their home, I'm going to make it so it's better for them. But absolutely everything I do is going to make it easier for me to kill them.
Now, let me bring that a point in, because this is another thing that I've mentioned previously, and I've used that example. I probably got it from you because I've been reading your stuff and working with you for such a long time. But when you say, I don't own enough land that I can do this stuff myself, I've helped people do it on their properties, but when you say, people say, I've come to you and I've been making improvements for 4 or 5 years myself already, kind of without a plan, well-intentioned, no doubt.
Yep.
But what I tell people is, whether you're going to do a select cut, whether you're going to put in food plots, whether you're going to, whatever you're going to do, however you're going to change your property. That's like me going into your house. I'm going to take your couch and put it in the kitchen, and I'm going to take your stove and put it in the basement. I just rearranged things. Like you said, it made it that much more difficult now for me to figure out how they're going to use it. Isn't that kind of the same thing, especially when you're talking about habitat work where people, like I said, well-intentioned, they come into their woods and they have 40 acres of land and they go, we're going to cut out all the aspen out of here. Why? Well, we're just going to do it. Aspen they look like they're big enough, and the logging guy said that we should probably do that. So we did. But now you completely changed that landscape. There's still going to be deer there, but they're going to use it a little bit differently.
Well, and one of the toughest concepts for people to grasp is you want dead areas. You don't want to. I mean, you can make a tremendous difference in 40 acres of land. I jump off on a little bit of a tangent here real quick. Most people have this misconception that you need hundreds of acres. No. Actually, in my opinion, it gets more and more and more and more important as the number of acreage shrinks, that you do improve it, because your margin of error, your wiggle room is so much. That place that you hunt with me down in Illinois, now it's 1,550 acres. I really have to mess up. I don't even know if it's possible to get that buck that has a core area smack dab in the center of that property. I don't believe I could make him leave if I wanted to. A lot different than 20 or 40 acres. 20 or 40 acres, that's easy to make him leave. So this is important for, if anything, in my opinion, critical for the smaller landowner. But yeah, you're in there, you're remodeling their house. If I'm going to remodel the house, you know what? I want to make it so that, okay, here's his bedroom, here's the kitchen. I want to be able to get to this hallway. I want to be able to get into that hallway and set up without him ever knowing that I've ever stepped foot on there. And how do you do that? Like, it's right to what you were getting at. You don't improve everything. You target your improvements, because if you improve everything, where are the deer going to be?
Yeah, it's kind
They're
of
going to be everywhere.
Coin flip, or it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a lot more difficult to pattern them.
Yeah, they're going to be everywhere. How am I going to be able to get into the property at all? A big thing, I know this isn't on our list, but a huge thing is when you're setting up a property, that you set up access. If this is my property, I want to be able to access along those borders.
Huge topic.
You know, and that way, when I've got a wind coming out of the south, you can bet I'm using this, because you know what? I love my neighbors, but I love them so much that I'm going to give them the gift of my wind. Same, I've got a wind coming out of the west. I'm going to be accessing this. But also at the same time, I really want this little zone right here that I'm accessing along to be dead, not overrun with deer, because I don't want to bust them.
And that's not the fun thing to talk about all the time, because everybody says, what do I need to plant? What kind of tree, apple tree should I be planting? What should I be cutting out of this forest? They're not thinking about entry and exit spots to their tree stand locations,
right,
or their various, not even their tree stand locations, just the various corners of their property. Huge.
Exactly.
I know you've written feature stories upon feature stories on this.
Between access and sanctuary, you set your property up right, and what ends up happening is, as season goes along, your deer numbers keep going like this. You don't have that drop that most people experience in their property, that, yeah, oh man, we're seeing a lot of deer coming out to the food plots in October, but by about midway through October, it just dropped through the roof, or through the floor, and I mean, it just hasn't. But no, you make it so that every single day, everybody wants to complain about their neighbors. Their neighbors are never on the same page. Man, if they just passed up bucks like that, and if they just hunted like, God love sloppy hunting neighbors. They are your best friends.
They're best friends.
Because as they're messing around over here and you're treating your property right, those deer are going like this. They're sucking into this property like a magnet. And between access, between sanctuaries, having the food, that is important, but really more than anything, access and sanctuaries. How you hunt that property, your deer numbers go like this over the course of season.
Some really good points, Stephen. I love talking to you about this, because that one there in particular, like you said, I would not want to have you as a neighbor. I want the guy, you know how people say, and I say that with all respect, I want the guy,
sure.
When people say, yeah, well, it was half an hour after first light and here comes a neighbor, you know what? Want to have that neighbor.
Yeah.
I want to have the neighbor that goes to his stand a half an hour after first light.
You
I want to
want-
have that neighbor who's leaving to go in at 10 o'clock in the morning. Nothing wrong against them. Like you said,
And
bless their hearts. I
runs
certainly
all
don't
over-
want the guy who's doing the same things that I'm trying to do.
Runs all over the property with ATVs, and man, he's out there all the time hunting. Thank you. That's great, because deer are just like our dogs at home. You can train them to accept anything, you can train them to fear anything, and they react to your stimulus. Now, as he's doing all this stuff over here, you're training him, come on over here. Over here, you're
Low
safe.
impact.
You're safe
Got it
as if
set up
in
the way you
your
want it set
mother's
up.
arms. And that's another key to that edge access. When I'm going in, as long as my wind's blowing like this, if I spook a deer along my edge, I'm not worried about it. If he happens to be over on the neighbors, I'm telling him, you know what, you're not safe over here. You better come over here. Now, if he happens to be just inside my property line, what am I doing? I'm kicking him deeper into my property. You're safe in here. Now I'd much rather scare him off the neighbors than mine, but all it is, my entire, and you know this probably better than anybody, because of how much we've hunted together and all the work. My approach, whether it's habitat management, deer management, or hunting, it's all about doing as many little things as you can to stack the odds in your favor.
Absolutely.
Not any one of them is going to change the world. You add them all together, though, it just may change the world.
It might just change it, and like you said, it's a one extra little thing. Gosh, I could sit here and talk to you for 2 hours on this, Steve, and we would, but I can't. Let's stop there. We're going to pick this up again because I know you're going to be in town. We're going to do a couple more deer talks with you this summer, hopefully. But that's it for today. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Before we leave, though, I got to remind you of the annual game camera sale at shopdeerhunting.com. All of our game cameras, I think, knock on wood, all of them. Check it out. They're up to 79% off. Some just really good cameras in there. Like if you need to pick up an extra one, you want to put it over a mineral lake or a food plot, get a couple extra censusing cameras for your work this summer. Check it out, shopdeerhunting.com. Mention that you saw it on Deer Talk Now. That's all you do. Mention Deer Talk in the checkout box. You're going to get 10% off your order. For Steve Bartylla, Steve, thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you for watching.
And everybody who's watching, I want to thank you for joining us, and join us again next week here for another episode of Deer Talk Now.